The New York Liberty are WNBA champions.
It blows my mind.
It's you can say it out loud. You always say it out loud, but now it's true. Live from Barclays Center with some celebratory bottles. No, we didn't drink any, but a lot of players did to celebrate, as did Sandy Brondello. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. It is just before midnight Sunday into Monday as we are starting to record live from Barclays Center. I'm Howard Megdal.
And I'm Jackie Powell.
And we are delighted that you have made us your first listen every day, showing up for us 6 days a week. Showing up for us. I swear I didn't have any of that bottle. Showing up for us, over 200,000 of you. In September alone, we are on track to break that mark here in October. The way we show up for you 6 days a week. It is, of course, not just me, not just Jackie, but the entire team over at the Nets. Go ahead and support the work. thenetstubes.com, where, how do I put it this way? We cover everything. So Jackie Powell, she was just approached by Brian Florentine, who's a terrific writer at Nets Daily and other places, who said, Jackie, this is yours. And that's how I feel, because at thenetstubes.com, at the Netstubes, we cover the teams that are winning. We cover the teams that are losing. We cover the 2-20 New York Liberty, and we cover the WNBA champion New York Liberty. And my goodness, Jackie Powell, you did it with distinction. So I hope everybody listening tonight goes $9 a month, $72 a year. Help us keep on doing it. I want to start with, Jackie, your top of the mind thoughts. We have just spent so much time hearing from the players, from head coach Sandy Brondello, from the Minnesota Lynx as well, in what was a 67-62 overtime victory. High stress environment, loud environment. We're going to talk a lot about the Liberty segment 1, segment 2. Segment 3, we are going to talk about the Lynx because the Lynx had an incredible season and we need to talk about them and should talk about them. And we like to talk about them. So
and Cheryl's presser too.
And Cheryl Reeve's press conference where she left no thought unexpressed, as is the Cheryl Reeve way, in what was, and we've talked about this on the show too, a remarkable year for her and for that team as well. But Jackie, let's start at the end.
Okay.
And let's go back. Betnijah Laney standing there as a champion. What was that like? What did we learn from Betnijah Laney, champion, tonight?
Well, she was, glowing. She was glowing with gratitude and joy, and she just couldn't stop talking about what it meant for the team.
Mm-hmm.
It was for everyone. She sort of said, we don't get this done without everyone in our locker room.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if they played, doesn't matter, how much they participate in practice. It's interesting. One of our colleagues went up to me and said, Jackie, you got the biggest smile out of her tonight when you asked her a question. And I essentially said, and I remembered this from a year ago when Betnijah Laney Hamilton addressed us today. It was October 20th, 2023, during exit interviews.
Yeah.
She sat right up here and she talked about how her niece, who I'm sure many of you have seen on social media,
Little JJ,
wiped away her tears after losing in the WNBA finals a year ago. And so I asked her, I said, so, okay, if JJ wiped away your tears last year, what did she do this year? Did she wipe away a different type of tear? And she just went into this whole monologue about this little girl. And apparently Little JJ fell asleep.
Can you imagine falling asleep in that game? I listen, I had young children who fell asleep in the most remarkable of circumstances. So I get it, I understand it, but my goodness, there's a lot to get to in that remarkable game. But again, I remember you and me talking. And the thing I said to you about Benijah Laney Hamilton back when she was just Benijah Laney
Yeah.
was teams win championships with players like Benijah Laney. You don't win championships without them. And it's Benijah Laney, Hamilton.
Yes.
That is Kayla Thornton,
Mm-hmm.
who is her birthday, by the way.
Oh, what a birthday present for
Turns
her.
out, you said that to me this morning. Wouldn't that be a great birthday, as it
Mhm.
turned out for KT? And it was. And again, I just want to go through a common theme we also heard throughout every player talking. They talked about the way the organization takes care of them. Kayla Thornton's parents are here. They're both retired now. They're here on a regular basis. The Liberty have made them feel like family. It's been really important to the Liberty to do that right. It is what Courtney Vandersloot was talking about when she spoke about her mom. And her mom passed away this summer. And the Liberty said, you need to take all the time you need. And you come back to us when you're ready to come back to us. And not every WNBA team does it that way or has done it that way. And I'm just, that was a win-win because Courtney Vandersloot came back and was emotionally in a place to help this team. She was ready to help this team. She came off the bench. This is a Hall of Fame point guard. I don't think you can make a reasonable argument that there have been 5 better point guards in the history of this league than Courtney Vandersloot. And Courtney Vandersloot was willing to come off the bench to win her team a championship.
And Cheryl Reeve has said multiple times that Sandy Brondello making that change was probably the best adjustment
Absolutely.
in this entire postseason.
Because Leo Phoebus, who is in no way a rookie, although she is technically
is.
and legally a rookie,
Yes.
but she creates matchup problems that were not just a problem throughout this playoffs. They've really changed. I remember the conversations we had a year ago about this, and it was, what are the Liberty going to do to catch up with the quick guards that the Las Vegas Aces had? And instead, the Liberty had a different point. The Liberty had a scenario where they needed the we're back. It's a little bit of a wild scene here, as you can imagine. So
Yeah.
the point I was making, do you remind me what the point I was making?
The point you were making was how essentially the Liberty countered the quick guards of the Las Vegas Aces.
Now you have to adjust to the Liberty. And by the way, to your point about Sandy, how critical was that big lineup she went to in the third quarter, which ultimately was decisive in this game?
Niara Sabali, let's take a look at her stat line. 13 points on 5 of 7 shooting. 7 rebounds. Oh my God.
A steal as well and a block.
A block.
Niara Sabali, and everyone couldn't wait to sing her praise. I mean, what a beautiful, when I can just speak for myself. I'm curious if you feel the same way. Like in this business, it's really, you come to understand everyone is human.
Yeah.
And so they aren't villains, right? But you see individuals and you see their arc and you see how hard they've worked.
Yeah.
And you see them in that moment, and seeing Niara wipe away tears when I remember talking to her as she's rehabbing one of multiple injuries when she's still in college and the things she's had to go through. You remember we talked to Jonathan and Sandy on this very podcast.
Our first edition of the next Taking Over Locked On Women's Basketball.
We talked about Niara Sabali being drafted. She wasn't going to be ready for a year, and they believed in her.
They did. And apparently, and Jonathan Culp took a lot of criticism for selecting her when they did, because they were like, you have a 5th overall pick and you're using it on a player who is very injury prone and probably won't be able to, play that year. But I also, just a quick little detail to throw in about just how much this group embrace Niara Sabali. So while all the celebrations were happening, and we were just talking about Benijah Laney Hamilton.
Yeah.
So Yolanda Laney comes onto the court when the confetti is in the air, and she like finds Niara. Like she has to talk to Niara.
Mm-hmm.
She like gives her this giant hug, and she's like telling her things, and it's this very impassioned conversation. I mean, I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw it. And I don't want to assume, but
it's just a legacy continuing to move forward.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to see. Niara talked about as she's sitting at this podium where we're sitting right now with Stewie and JJ about the fact that these were players that she looked up to. So a lot more to get to in segment 2 and 3 here on Locked On Women's Basketball. Back talking about Stewie, talking about Sabrina Ionescu, who had the worst game of her career, I think, by almost any measure,
Yep.
but still had the confidence to be able to make a critically huge shot down the stretch.
And a pass too.
And a pass too, never took her foot off the gas. So a lot more to get to. Really looking forward to it in segment 2 and 3. I'm Howard Megdal.
And I'm Jackie Powell.
And this is Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by BetterHelp. And, the thing I love about what BetterHelp does is it allows you to work through things, not just yourself, not just with friends and family, but with somebody, an independent and unbiased observer who's going to help you think through life. And so much of what we succeed and fail at comes from what we are doing psychologically, not just what we're doing physically. And again, you heard it again and again tonight for a team becoming a champion. So BetterHelp helps you do that. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give it a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. BetterHelp. Back here in segment 2, Howard Megdal with
Jackie Powell.
And this is Locked On Women's Basketball. Just waving to the great Dina, who is so helpful to us all season long. Shout out. Thank you very much. We'll be chatting. See you very soon. And so we will keep her last name out of it to protect her anonymity. But she's part of the WNBA PR crew that we are very grateful for. Sam and Ron as well. Huge thank you to you. And by the way, huge thank you to Brian here in New York for everything that he did, especially tonight, corralling players who had a few. And we're still happy to really share this with us. But we talk about Sabrina. She got real emotional in a question I asked her. And again, it goes back to these arcs, right? I covered Sabrina her freshman year at Oregon. I went to California. I'd heard about her, and I came away saying, this is someone special, and watched what she was able to do as a collegian. And her senior year, she returned to play an extra year so that she could go play for a championship. And then March of 2020 was when she was going to play for a championship.
We all know what happened in
COVID
March of
wiped it out.
2020.
And then Jackie, I mean, just take me through. Sab comes here. We were blown away by what she was in the first 2 1/4 games.
Oh, yeah.
And then what happens?
And then what happens is we were all at home watching the WNBA bubble, and the Liberty were playing the Atlanta Dream. And so who was guarding Sabrina Ionescu but Benijah Laney? Of course, Benijah Laney, on the best perimeter player on the other team. Meanwhile, the Liberty of the 2020 bubble, it was a team full of 7 rookies.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the picture. And essentially, Benijah was guarding Sabrina pretty closely, pretty aggressively, pretty physically, if you all get my reference here.
As she should.
Like,
yeah.
physicality in the WNBA was happening in 2020.
Yes.
Like let's just
It's always been happening.
be clear.
Okay.
And so then
We all know this, right?
we do.
Good.
And so then Sabrina essentially, it was, I'm trying to, if it was like a twist or a fall, she injured her ankle while being guarded by Benijah, and it was pretty bad. It was a 3rd-degree ankle sprain. Essentially, what that means is she broke her ankle.
And it's worth noting that a lot of people come back from that forever slower.
Yeah.
You lose a step.
Yeah.
And Sabrina even tonight talked about, it was a year and a half till she even started to feel like herself. And you could see it. She was fighting through it. But what's amazing to me is that Sabrina not only regained it, but she's faster this year than she's ever been. That she was able to do the work in this offseason to build that first step to get to the basket. And again, what was she most excited about tonight? She was talking to us. We were defending. You guys all saw us defending, right? Yes, that's right. We all saw us defending. Thank you all. We have shouted you out again. Thank you. There's so many people who helped to make the coverage happen this year, and we really appreciate it.
We do.
Bottom line, Sabrina, end of this, comes together with the New York Liberty and a super team suddenly with Jonquel Jones and Brianna Stewart and even Courtney Vandersloot in the backcourt with her. In no way does Sabrina make it harder. Oh, I was here first. Oh, I was the star before everyone else was here. She buys in. She buys into what Sandy Brondello was doing, and she was a critical part of this team because she continued to get better. And
her defense too.
That's what she was most excited about to talk about. Did you see me defend out there? Was what she was saying. It's a lot of people who put in the work. It's how you find a championship. It's what you do. Look, this was not her best night.
Nope.
She was the first to say it. Brianna Stewart, but this accountability. Stewie had 15 rebounds. She had 13 points, but she shot 4 for 15 from the field. Her shot was not falling today. And the great Doug Feinberg of the Associated Press even asked her about making up for missing those free throws in game 1 by making 2 free throws to send it into overtime here in game 5. And Stewie herself makes this point. Yeah, but Doug, don't forget, I missed those 2 other free throws prior to it. All these players, even in the aftermath, and that's what you hear, and it's critical, they held themselves accountable. Sandy Brondello held herself accountable. She was mad about the officiating after game 4.
She was mad at herself.
That's right. And she was, I didn't call the timeout. I should have called the timeout. I should have run out of the center of the floor. There are things I could. Everyone held themselves accountable. And before we get to that break at the end of segment 2, just, Jackie, what stands out most to you about sort of the commonalities of the team that Jonathan Cole built here?
The commonalities? Oh man. Well, I think you were sort of saying the buy-in, the sacrifice. They brought that up a lot. I mean, I think in this game you really saw in these past 2 years, excuse me, Jonathan Kolb has valued the bench, the depth. That was something that he wanted when it came to his team standing out and being ready to withstand anything. Okay.
Can I just say real quick on that?
Yeah.
15-6 tonight. They don't win the game without a bench edge. They don't do it.
Correct. And so, yes, we've spoken a lot about Niara Sabali, but let's talk about Kayla Thornton for a moment.
Do we have to? All right. Twist my arm. Jackie knows my favorite subject to talk about.
So KT, a +2, but that maybe doesn't communicate the full story. So Benijah Laney-Hamilton was struggling with Nafisa Collier's physicality on switches. So Sandy Brondello thinks, okay, let's bring in Kayla Thornton so she can be very physical and run through screens and blow stuff up.
And early, by the way, first quarter. First quarter she's going to this. So I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
And I mean, listen, Kayla Thornton had 5 fouls, but some of those fouls were really important.
Absolutely. This entire game was such a slugfest. I love this kind of basketball. I grew up on this kind of basketball, seeing the way in which these two teams played tonight. But the other thing, everyone knew where everyone else was going. The reason why it was such a slog was because this was the 9th game between these two teams with two of the greatest coaches I will ever cover.
Yep.
And the two winningest coaches in the playoffs
Yep.
in WNBA history, not by accident.
Nope.
And so you put all that together with great players up and down both rosters and players who care about defending up and down both rosters. And this was the natural result. And it was not some failure. This was an absolute success of coaching, game planning, and defense. This was not a lot of open missed shots. I want to talk more about this, and I want to get to the Lynx, but we've got to get to segment 2's break. Right back after this, I'm Howard Megdal.
And I'm Jackie Powell.
And this is Locked on Women's Basketball. But first, Locked on Women's Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. And you must be freaking out like we are, right? Oh my God, the WNBA season is over. There's not women's college basketball for 13 days. It's November 4th. We'll be talking a lot about that, as you can imagine. But FanDuel has you covered. FanDuel has an opportunity right now to bet and get some bonus bets. So if you place your first $5 bet, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's, again, any $5 bet on FanDuel, get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. While you're at FanDuel.com, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, so much more on the same place where you place your bets. It's called football. Give it a try. See, how bad could it be? In the meantime, get ready for the stuff that matters, of course, women's college basketball coming your way very soon as well. And before you know it, the WNBA. But yes, that's right, FanDuel.com. Yeah, I don't know what the New York Giants were playing today, but it wasn't football. So back here, I am Howard Megdal.
And I'm Jackie Powell.
And this is segment 3 of Locked on Women's Basketball. And we're gonna turn it to the 30-10, incredible, within a hair's breadth of winning their 5th championship, Minnesota Lynx.
Before we talk about the Lynx,
Please.
I just want to make a point.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah.
About how low of a scoring game this was, because Brianna Stewart made a bit of a point during the presser about this. And she essentially said that, she challenged the league, and she said, well, maybe this game 5 would have been less of a slog if there were, more than one day in between the final 3 games of the WNBA finals.
I want to say this. I do not believe that one team was favored over another in this game, in this series.
Yeah.
I think there were periods of time during the course of this series that I should say the opposite. I'm not sure there was any consistency to the consistency of the officiating, and it affected different teams at different times over the course of this entire series. This has been a WNBA issue for a long time. There are things that can be done. There can be investing in more training. There can be investing in making sure that the refs are getting more reps. They are getting full-time salaries.
Maybe
There can
hiring
yes.
people that, have done this at the highest level. If you pay them a higher salary, then maybe some refs at the NBA will come ref the W.
I'll tell you, because of the opposite, as I understand it.
Oh.
And what I've talked to people around the league is that they say that instead, often WNBA officiating is simply treated as a pipeline to NBA officiating rather than the other way around. So I say all that by way of saying, and Michael Rosenberg wrote a piece in SI that really stuck with me, which is to say that this league, there's money coming, okay? And they know this, and everyone's talking about how we're going to invest that money. That money has to be invested in the officiating. And I thought that when Cheryl talked about, she talked about the 2016 championship. We did a whole podcast on game 5 of the 2016 finals. I remember it very well. And bottom line is that needs to improve. I understand why Cheryl was angry about it and why she spoke out about it. We have a big story written about it. Terry Horseman working on it as we speak. We have so much coverage. By the way, thenexthoops.com, you didn't have Jackie's big Liberty piece. Rob Knox has an incredible takeaway piece focusing on Niara Sabali and Taylor Thornton. M. Adler's game story already up, really comprehensive, really helpful. And of course, we have the podcast here as well. And over on social, what the incredible Gigi Spear is doing to take you inside every moment, not to be missed. But Napheesa Collier, 22 points, 7 rebounds tonight, a steal, 2 blocks, had a year. Somebody asked this question. I wonder what you think about it. You know, there's this talk that, the league and the conversation has been so much Asia and Stewie. I feel like last year, disproportionately, Asia, Stewie, Alyssa Thomas. And I think understandable. And I remember writing about this at the time that, I think you can absolutely make an argument that Fee is sort of in this group of 4.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's not even an argument. That's how it should be. This year, I think there was an argument to be made that Fee was probably statistically the second best player overall. Asia had this historic season, but then you take into account what her team was doing overall. You take into account how good her team was defensively. And I think there was a decent argument to be made for Napheesa Collier. Certainly, here's what's clear, what's beyond argument, is that she is one of the very best players in the world, has to be in that conversation for best in the world, now and for the foreseeable future, younger than Breanna Stewart, younger than Asia Wilson. So it's interesting that she has ascended to that level, and Cheryl thinks she has another level, is what she was saying tonight. But when we talk about the Liberty as a super team, Minnesota as a collective, part of that kind of misses how great Napheesa Collier is too. Oh, absolutely. But also a super team is also a collective. Like, so why are we saying that? Why are we saying that the Liberty super team is not a team? Here we go again.
It's
Kelsey
both,
Plum.
right? But it's
Kelsey
both,
Plum.
but it's everything. But yes, there was.
Sorry.
No, there was an implicit answer to everything that Kelsey Plum had said about the Liberty after last year in the way the Liberty performed down the stretch. And by the way, in overtime, Pepper Pursley asked that question. When did the switch flip?
No, I asked that question and they didn't answer it immediately.
Excuse me, that is correct. And then when Pepper asked at the end, they did, and it was overtime.
Yeah, or Stewie, actually.
That's fair, yes.
Stewie in the presser, when I asked JJ, and JJ was sort of like in a
fugue state. How's that?
Yeah,
that's a nice way of putting it.
Fugue state.
Yes.
It was like a surreal moment, and it was hard for her to wrap her head around the game.
Yes.
And so
Stewie said it at the end.
Stewie went like this. She was like, O-T.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right.
And then Sandy, in her way, said that, I have this firm belief that when the first team that scores in overtime is the team that's going to win the game.
We have to look that up and see. It'd be interesting. But I'm sure Sandy knows. I'm sure Sandy's not her first WNBA final. So as we look ahead, and so to bring things full circle, this Minnesota Lynx team has tremendous talent. This team potentially next year has a healthy Diamond Miller. I hope desperately for a healthy Diamond Miller because there's so much talent there. And what she could have brought to this team may well have been the difference. Listen, anything could have been the difference in a series decided in overtime by 5 points with the smallest margin of victory of any WNBA final series ever. But Diamond Miller can come and do more next year. You can see Courtney Williams build on what she did this year. It was not her best night tonight, and Cheryl Reeve pointed that out. But what Courtney Williams was as a point guard this year is remarkable. We saw no downturn whatsoever from Kayla McBride in year 11. In fact, by efficiency numbers, Kayla McBride had maybe the best season of her career. And, Alana Smith, Bridget Carlton, the talent just goes on and on for this Minnesota Lynx team. Do you think going into next year, New York, there's going to be a lot that happens, right?
Mhm.
But New York is likely the favorite if they keep this team together.
Yeah.
Is Minnesota a co-favorite?
Yes, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. I mean,
I don't think there could be anything else.
no,
Yeah.
I'd have to take a look at their books and see, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of this will stay the same.
Well, but listen, we also have an expansion draft coming. I mean, there's a lot
Oh,
coming.
listen,
ahead.
Diamond Miller might not even be on the Lynx.
That's
with
a
the
great point.
expansion.
That is definitely, they're going to have to protect 6.
Yep.
We're going to have to go find out those lists and report them,
Mhm.
which we are looking forward to doing.
Yes, we are.
And so that will all be part of an incredible off season to come. Again, I do want to go full circle, and I want to go back to you. And when you were covering the New York Liberty in Westchester,
Yeah.
when you were covering a team that, there were painful press conferences with Katie Smith,
Yep.
and it just felt like maybe they were never going to get there. Could you have pictured, and when I say this, I don't just mean winning, could you have pictured this, what we just experienced tonight?
No, I mean, if you were to say to a 22-year-old me in 2019, oh, Jackie, continue to cover this team for a bunch of years and you'll see they attract an audience of over 18,000 people and bring home the first elusive championship, I would have said, huh?
Yeah, we didn't even talk about they made a trade effectively and got dramatically more press from their mascot.
Yeah.
That alone is a totally different. And I'm not saying that to be funny. I mean, the fact that Ellie the elephant
Yeah.
is profiled in every major
Fashion
national
magazine.
publication, fashion magazines. You spent the day with Ellie. We'll put your story in the show notes. That's still one of my favorites you did this year.
Ellie came out of the hallway when we were interviewing players wearing the championship hat, and her braid was still glowing, and she greeted all of us and she gave us high fives and she posed a little bit more.
And we didn't even put in a media request for Ellie.
No,
that was just Ellie
and
going
she
above and
just-
beyond.
Yeah, she just
Yeah.
came out and performed a little for us.
Everybody did a lot to make this championship happen. Again, a huge thank you to everyone who helped make the coverage possible, and WNBA lead PR and team PR, to every single player and coach and general manager who was giving of their time
Yep.
to help us tell your stories. We are grateful to all of you who did. We will be back with you tomorrow because there is no off season in women's basketball. I don't know why anybody thinks there is, but there is no off season in women's basketball. We're going to get Jackie to the train. We're going to get me to South Jersey. Until then, I'm Howard Megdal.
And I'm Jackie Powell.
This is Locked On Women's Basketball. Thank you all for joining us on what I say delightfully is this journey that we will never forget. Have a wonderful night, everyone.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.